Welcome to Collin College. I'm Scott Yarbrough, professor of English, and I have published the literary journal for the college for, well, I just realized this is my 20th year of being in charge of the publication, which has been an honor because most universities don't have a annual publication that is in continuous publication. Ours has been in continuous publication for 33 years, which is remarkable for a community college, and a rare opportunity for those of you who are at this school who want to be a part of a real publication. And the reason I can say a real publication is it won national recognition last year. So it's a reputable magazine, and that's one of the things I want to show you is whenever you are trying to publish reputable versus unreputable versus online versus a lot of those different types of things, depending upon how it is that you want to try to publish your material. When I first started, I was lucky enough that I worked at another college where we hired a young lady, Laura Kaziski, at the time, who has become internationally known now, but I got to be a friend of hers for probably 3 years, young in my career, and she had already published. And at that particular point in my career, I started very early. I was 22 at the time, and I knew I was a novelist, and so I'd written a novel. And so I was trying to publish it. And she said, have you tried short stories? So I said, no, I'll try some short stories. So I tried some short stories. And then she said, have you ever tried poetry? And so I tried some poetry. And once I tried some poetry, she said, have you ever sent anything out? And that's when I kind of hesitated, and I thought, how do you send things out? Doesn't someone drive by in a limousine and know that you're a great writer and open the door for you and pop a bottle of champagne and put you in the back seat and drive you to New York, and the next day you do the talk show? And I'm joking, but I'm kind of not joking, because of a lot of times what I get from my students whenever they take a creative writing class is they say, I have all of this stuff. And I say, okay, what have you done with all of your stuff? And the first answer they always have is, I want you to read it. And that would be like someone walking by my office every 5 to 10 minutes and saying, I have a novel, Mr. Yarbrough, do you mind reading it? And the answer to that would be an obvious yes, I do mind reading that, because this will sound mean, and it sounded very harsh to me too whenever I was younger, is, aren't you interested in what I'm doing? And I say, okay, look, take a creative writing class, find a creative writing class, and let me get the first thing I want you to do is to not take a creative writing class because you think the creative writing teacher is going to try to make you write the way that they write. That is not the purpose of a creative writing class. The purpose of a creative writing class is for you to be with a group of people, 20 or so. It would be the same as me saying, as a musician, everyone bring your guitar twice a week for an hour and 15 minutes, and we're all going to sit in the same room and we're all going to play guitar for an hour and 15 minutes for one semester. I guarantee you by the end of that semester, you're going to be a better player, and you're going to hear better players, and you're going to hear worse players, and you're going to hear somebody knock it out of the park every once in a while, and you're going to hear someone who wrote one of the best poems that you've ever heard in your life bomb the next week. It's an incredibly wonderful learning experience. And along with that comes, if you have the correct professor, hopefully, is you'll get to the point where we are now, which is you're ready to publish, you're ready to send something out, you're brave enough to show your skin, so to speak. One of the big misnomers that we had from years ago was you're supposed to send one thing out and then you're supposed to wait for that one thing to come back. The reality of that is what happens usually is you send one thing out and then you sit around for a year waiting for that to come back, because whatever company you send it to or whatever you send it to is waiting to read it, or they're waiting for an assistant to read it, or it got lost in the mail, or it may have gotten lost in the mailbox, or somebody's dog may have eaten it. There's a lot of different reasons to not assume that just because you have sent something that it got there, and it got there to the right person, and it got there at the right time. So one of the things that used to be a big no-no is what we call multiple submissions, which means that you only send one thing to one person at one time. It has become okay in the last 10 years for you to send multiple things to multiple people. Now, that does not mean that you can send 100 things to 100 different people, because if someone takes it and another person takes it and another person takes it, well, then you've got a problem with okay, who gets it, who got it first, and that sort of thing. So you kind of have to be careful if you are going to multiple submit, which means that you're sending to multiple places at the same time, which you should do, because, and I might get a spanking for this one, but there's a lot of times that you'll send to one place. I had one poem one time I sent one place. 2 years later, I got a copy of the book that the poem was in, and I was never notified that the poem was going to be in the book. I was never, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the way from that to a rejection within 7 days. So you never know how quickly different places are going to respond, right? The first thing you need to do is, and I'm using a cheat sheet here, is when you send out something, and I'm a poet, so I send out, if you're a poet, you send up to 5 poems. Never send over 5 poems, and never ever, in my opinion, send, your epic poem that you have written and been sitting on for 20 years. There's a pretty good likelihood that that's not going to be something that someone wants. And if it's a short story, it probably needs to be under 7 to 10 pages. I'll show you most of the books. These are the journals that we're talking about that you would be publishing in. Things that look like this, that are usually put out either by colleges, universities. This is when the Evansville Review from Evansville College, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can see the size of these. And so if you send them a short story that is 20 pages long, and there is 70 pages in the book, then you are asking them basically for 1/10 of their book for a 7-page short story. 7 pages is about as long as your short story ought to be. If you're writing poetry, again, send around 5 poems. Novels, whole different story. We'd probably have to do a whole nother seminar on something like that. It's a whole different ball game on that one. When you do send stuff out, make sure, and I'm gonna read this part. Make sure that your name, your address, your zip code, and if you know your multi-digit zip code, then put that on there too. Your home number, your work number, and make sure that they are at the top of each page, especially on poetry. Because if I send in 5 poems, there's a grand possibility that they may take one of my poems but reject the other 4. And in rejecting the other 4, if they take one of my poems and it was on the 2nd page and I didn't have that information on there, they don't know how to contact me. I cannot tell you how many times we have decided to publish someone's poem, and then I get to looking it up eventually, and I can't find any address, any contact information, anything on that particular person, because they did not include it on each poem that they sent in, right? This is a different time too. Traditionally 15 years ago, you would send everything snail mail so that it was easy to just stuff envelopes, send it, and then wait for things to come back. And when you hear the word self-addressed stamped envelope, that means you put a stamp on your envelope and you put your name on there twice, here and here, and stick it inside of the other envelope. And then on the outside, you put the stuff that sends it to the place that you want to send it to. And that way they can take it out of the envelope. Stuff they don't like, they can put back in your envelope and tell you, you're horrible. And the stuff that they might want to keep, they can say, but we really did like this one, so we're going to keep it, and stick it back in your envelope that already has a stamp on it and send it back. There are still places, and this is where you have to do your research, that use that method. And the reason for it is, if you look at my hair, most of the people that are in this business are not 12 years old. They've been doing it for quite some time. And there's a huge gap between generations right now of whether people have flipped over to the digital age, or whether they're still kind of working in what we call the snail mail age. So here's step 2, right? Here's your Bible. And I don't mean that sacrilegious, I mean that really. Here is your writing Bible, Writer's Market. For those of you who are saying, okay, I'm a novelist, there's a Novels Market book too. I'm a poet, there's a Poets Market book too. I'm a short story writer, there's a Short Story Writers Market too. I'm an essay writer, there's an Essay Writers Market also. All of these. And our libraries are incredibly great at keeping these up to date. Okay, watch this. I pulled this one up. It says 2012. Why would I not want to look in the 2012 version of the Writers Market as opposed to the 2020 Writers Market? And the answer to that is times change. What has changed from 2012 to 2020? And how many of the companies do you think that were in the 2012? And if you see the volume of these two, the size of these two, I can feel it. It's probably this much. I'm going to do it like this much smaller, this one. That is the more modern one, right? And I don't know if it's because it has less entries, less things in it, etc. What you are interested in whenever you look in this is there's a lot in this. It says, you know, trade journals, playwriting, contests, awards. For the most part, you're leaving the contests and awards alone. You're mostly looking, book publishers you're leaving alone, agents you're leaving alone. You're mostly looking at the section that says consumer magazines right here, right? And in each of these, it's going to tell you anything you need to know about that particular magazine. So this is a true story. I once sent a poem to a place, and they said, we only publish certain types of material, and it was most certainly not my type of material. In other words, don't send a story that is not appropriate for a magazine that may be related to, say, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, or some sort of a science fiction deal, if that's not your type of work. So your job, the reason you're looking through this journal, this magazine, is to find out which ones. This one says, let me just read one. It says, okay, what we need. We publish personal nonfiction stories and anecdotes, funny, illuminated, adventurous, frightening, or grim. Stories should reflect that unique alchemy that occurs when you enter unfamiliar territory and begin to see the world differently as a result. Stories that have already been published, including book excerpts, are welcome, as long as the authors retain the copyright or can obtain permission from the copyright holder to reprint the material. So each one of those is going to tell you all of that information that you need to know. Remember, I told you, you don't need much of this book except for that part of it. You don't need the book publishers. You're not going to, that's not what you're interested in. You're interested in publishing in small journals first, like this, right? And what happens is often when you start reading this, where you think you want to send your material, and you'll either do that electronically or you will do it by mail, but it's going to be in that book, and it's going to tell you this is how we want it submitted. And when they say they want it submitted that way, don't say, well, I don't care, I'm just going to send it however I want to send it. Because if you send it that way, I know as a publisher myself that if I get something that is not the way that I asked for it, it goes in the no-no pile immediately. sometimes if it comes in mail form, it doesn't even get opened. Oftentimes, I'm not even the one who looks at the first submission. It's people who work for me, which are the student. And that's why it's so important to me for you guys to take the one of the courses, creative writing courses. We got Latanya Watkins. I mean, we got all kinds of people here that are really, really good and really published writers that can help you with all of this. And when you take the course, you know, I'm trying to smash a whole course into, 1 hour right here. When you take the course, you see all of this emerge slowly. You see us have the event where we have the unveiling of the book. You get to see us actually go through and read and say, I like this one, and this is a reason I like this one. So we're going to put it in the yes pile, the no pile, the maybe pile. Then we go back through the maybe piles, and we go through putting in the good piles. Then we have to notify the people, and then we have to get them notified that by publishing in one of these, you're actually kind of sort of copywriting your material. They're not stealing it from you, and they don't own it at that point. They get what they call first right or first publication rights, which means that they get to publish it, but then you still own it. It goes back to you. And so that's the good part of it. It's almost like a free copyright for some of your stuff. After you publish in several different things and send to different places and have very hard skin, because you're going to send a bunch of places. I think I sent 20 something places before I got a bite, which is pretty lucky actually. And the first one I published was in this one, right? And I looked at it and I thought, well, that looks kind of weird, looks kind of silly, And then I started looking through there, and someone said, oh my God, William Stafford's in that one. And I said, who's William Stafford? That's how young I was. And then I realized, oh, and later on, I realized who William Stafford was. Same in this one. I realized who Billy Collins was. I realized who John Updike was. I realized who X.J. Kennedy was. I realized who Diana Goya was. I realized who. So all of a sudden I started realizing, wow, just because something looks like it looks, right? This one, it looks like a little pamphlet kind of thing. But this is one of the hardest ones to publish in. It's crazy. And so you look at some of these, and then you get some of these that are like this size. This is a good journal. They publish a lot of stuff, and it's good quality stuff, right? So I'm just trying to show you different ones and what they look like, and that, you can't go by the name. This one, the Cream City Review, I remember seeing that. I thought, do I want to be in the Cream City? What is that? And then I realized that was from Michigan, and close to Wisconsin. Oh, okay. So it has something to do with the dairy industry, and that's where they got their name from. It'd be kind of like if you lived out in West Texas, call it the Mesquite Tree Review, one of those kinds of things. So whenever you do submit, and how you submit, again, you get your Writer's Market. This costs $29.99. If you're a serious writer, you would go buy this, and what I would do is go through and look at each one that is a no-no. Because sometimes what a no-no is, we only publish poems from Texas, or we publish poems only from upstate New York. Well, I'm not going to send to some place that only publish upstate New York, because I'm not from upstate New York, right? So I look and I try to figure out which one of these looks like it would be something and has a description that fits what I write, that fits the type of stuff I write. If it says, for example, in here, if you look hard enough, there's one that only does haikus. I don't write haikus, but one of my students last semester, that's all they wanted to write was haikus. I'm the haiku, and I said, okay. There's actually a journal that's all they publish is haiku poems. So how do I know that? I spent the time and sat down and went through this, which takes you hours, literally. But it's worth it. And mark through the ones that you think, no. This one says, please, no unsolicited manuscripts or queries. That means don't send them anything, because they're not going to read it. If it's unsolicited, that means you have to have an agent. How do you get an agent? You get famous. You publish a whole bunch of stuff and then people start coming after you. That's when the limo comes by and picks you up. But that still hasn't happened to me. So that's not going to happen for most of us. About probably 0.001 of you are going to do that. The reason to do it is because it's something inside of you that you have to do. It's like, I can't explain it. I also paint. I also play music. I played in a band. I try to paint most every day. Why? Because I have to. And it's not because I make myself, it's because there's something I think that's inside of artists that artists kind of understand. And if you understand that, then it is something that you should pursue. And I can't tell you what it's like to have something in a publication and to be able to look at it or hand it down to kids or you know, my mother every once in a while will say, do you have anything new? And I say, yeah, I've got a couple of new things. I'll send it to you. And it's a sharing experience. So that's the feed off part. Have I made some money off of? Yeah, every once in a while you get paid, but that's not the reason that you do it. It's for the just the satisfaction of doing it and leaving behind a legacy and an archive of who you are and the way you see the world. And I think that that's important, very important. And I think it's important for me personally that I would rather be in a book than I would be online, because I think that online people can put whatever they want to put online. A book is something that people, I think they think a little bit more about it, and that it's got to go to a printer, it's got to be bound, it's got to be paid for, it's got to be all of that sort of stuff. So I think the quality is just better, and the reality of the experience is more real that way, I think, whenever it happens. So if you're going to publish, first of all, make sure your name, I'm going to say it again, address, zip code, home, and home phone number are at the top of each page. I have gotten phone calls instead of letters from people that say, hey, we're putting the deal together and we decided to use your poem, but we're going to print tomorrow. And so I go, okay, yeah, yes, you can use it. And so they say, okay, that's a verbal yes. So phone number, no one's going to steal your phone number. No one's going to, that's not what these places are about, right? And that's one reason I say that I'm a little bit leery of the online kind of stuff, because some may be, but most of these have been around for Concho River Review. It's been around forever and ever. And again, literature from Texas. Yeah, where do we live? Texas, right? That's not a bad place to send, right? Because you know those people are going to be interested in Texas literature. If you're from Texas, if you are a Texan and you talk like me, and most of your stories are Texan-oriented type of stuff, right? Choose a name. First of all, I write under my own name, which is not, that's probably the smartest thing that you can do. I mean, if you're going to be Sting or, you know, Madonna or Cher or P. Diddy or something like that, remember that name is going to, if you are successful, you have to stick with that name, because you can't publish like 10 things and then all of a sudden change your name. It doesn't work. And I hate to put it this way, if you're married, I would go with your maiden name, because most often that's the most consistent thing that you can go with. I know that Laura Kaziski, the girl that I was talking about, has been married, I think 3 times. And that's not the point. The point is she started writing under Laura Kaziski, and she still writes under Laura Kaziski because that's her name. And I think that that's very important for people to consider, because if you start trying to change your name, it's like starting writing all over, because people do look and say, oh, okay, this is from so-and-so. When you're looking at something from Billy Collins was the poet laureate, I think for 2 years, it may be 3 years, of the United States. So when someone gets a poem from him and it says Billy Collins, they're going to read that poem. I guarantee you they're going to read that poem. And so as your reputation gets a little bit better, then people will start to recognize your name. I ran into one very weird situation where there's a very good short story writer whose name is Scott Yarbrough. And a lot of people ask me why I call myself R. Scott Yarbrough. And that's to delineate between myself and that guy. And we actually met at a conference one time, and we had a really, really good conversation. He said, "Thank God you're a decent writer." And I said, "Yeah, and thank God we write in different genres, that I write poetry and that you write short stories, because people delineate between those two, and they know that it's probably me that's sending that in and not him that's sending that in." So let me keep hitting base product kind of things. The address that you put on, here's the deal, is a lot of people submit to our publication and they put their Collin County Community College address on there, their email, not knowing that we do this once a year, which means it's very possible that no one might look at your poem for upwards of 30 minutes, not 30, that's my clock, sorry. 30, they may not look at it for 6 months to a year. And it could be that your email address has changed since then. Could be somebody wants your poem and they can't find you because you've given them an email address that's not still valid. So try to give them something that is a valid address, a valid phone number, a valid place where they have a valid contact with you. Here's one of them that is a huge no-no. A lady last year sent us 47 poems. Do you think that we wanted to read 47 poems? If we get over probably 250, 300 submissions. So when someone sends you every poem that they have ever written, that's a real don't do that kind of thing. That's like taking someone, every painting that you have ever done, all 147 of them, and saying, here's my paintings, right? A lot of places also take photography. Don't send them your entire trip to Mexico. Pick 4 or 5 of the photographs that you want to send them. Make sure that they're at high pixel to where they will reprint well. Again, they can't steal your photograph. The copyright goes back to you. In fact, whenever we send out an acceptance letter to each person, we say, here's a deal that says first rights revert back to the author, which means that you still own the poem. And any reputable place is gonna do that. Again, the multiple submissions, I would say, as you get more popular, send to less places at the same time, because there's possibility that 2 places might want the same poem. When I first started, I would send to 10 different places, and I would, as soon as I got the poems back, I would send them back the same day to another place. That was a rule I had. Don't sit on them. And then if I got a poem back 10 different times from 10 different places, I assumed that was a bad poem and that maybe I needed to relook at it. And these are just rules that I have followed throughout my writing career. I've realized that long poems don't sell, long short stories don't sell. And what I mean by sell is they don't get taken, because oftentimes what you're paid in is, wow, I got paid for this poem? 3 copies of this journal, right? Which is cool. I mean, what a nice Christmas present for your parents. But the point that you're trying to do is, okay, I get one in this one. I get one in this one, right? I get one in this one. And in this one, one in this one, one in this one. Then you can put together what we call a collection of poetry. And that means that all the poems in it, that's when you can go to a book publisher. That's when you can actually do a book of your own. And that's the next step. So your first step in publication is to try to get published, right? My suggestion is anybody can publish online, and some people never pay to be published either, because there's people online that will say, oh, we're putting out a book, and there's and for $20 we'll give you a copy of the book. Well, what they're doing is 20 times 400 people, if that's how many they publish, do the 2 times 4 is 8. That's about $8,000, and they figure your grandma's going to buy one, and someone else is going to buy one. That's about a $50,000 proposition for that particular company. How much are you going to make out of it? Zero. They're going to make about 50,000 to however much more than that. Has nothing to do with art. Has nothing to do with writing. It has to do with they're going to take whatever you send in. So avoid those places. Avoid shady email places. And I'm not saying that there aren't some good email deals. There are, and you just have to do your research. And I'm not going to do it for you. Your creative writing teacher is not going to do it for you. I'm not going to read your poem and tell you it's great and here's where you need to send it. That's your job. And if you don't want to do that job, get you an agent, right? And good luck getting an agent, because I can't even get my wife to read my poems sometimes. In fact, I pay my wife to read my poems. I give her $10 and I say, I want 10 minutes and I want your true, honest opinion. We sometimes talk about the title. Sometimes she says, I don't understand what this line means, or you've got a misspelled word right here, or, oh my gosh, this is the best poem you've ever written. I can die now. Or, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Those types of reactions. So the preparation for sending out is just as important as the actual sending out. And again, the toughness of your skin is when you get something back. What I did, I told you, I don't wait around and go, oh man, maybe I should do this or do that. I take the poem, this is back when I put them in an envelope, take it out of one envelope, put it in another envelope, and send it back out, right? Do that 10 times. If I get it back 10 times, then I assume that somebody doesn't want it and I have to start all over again. No mistakes, no handwriting, no, I've actually gotten a poem submitted to our journal on a paper towel. No. Typed in a font. One guy wrote a poem and it was a Klingon poem. And so he sent the poem, I guess there's a Klingon font you can use. And so he sent the poem in Klingon font, which sounds kind of cool, you know, but I thought, okay, who can actually read this? Maybe a cool idea for a science fiction, but he sent it to us, right? We were the wrong magazine for him to send that to. That's where, can I hold up the book yet again? That's where you go to the Writer's Market book, right? I told you can buy this. Guess what? Every library on the Collin College circuit has the Writer's Market, if I'm thinking right. And they do go back to 2012. And one of the reasons that I like that they go back to 2012 is to show, some of them go back before that. I like to show people how many companies go out of business, how many companies print for 1 year and then they're not in the Writer's Market the next year. The best way for you to figure out who's in the Writer's Market and who's legit, the Pushcart Prize of Poetry, this is for poets, you poets out there, go to the back and it will say, somewhere in the back here, these are the journals, these are the magazines that we went through to pick. Here it is. Look at this. It's got, here's the addresses. And this is what I use instead of the Writer's Market. I don't even get the Writers Market anymore. I figure if it's in the back of the Pushcart Prize, which is the equivalent of the Emmy Award, Oscar Award for poetry, they go through every major journal in the United States that is worthy, and they choose the best poems from that year and put them in here. And then they list all of the magazines that they went through to select those poems. I can't think of a better place and a more reputable place to go and watch. Let me hold it closer. This has the address of each place on it. So, I mean, come on, you can't beat that. Same with short stories, right? You want to see what people are writing right now? Short Stories 2020, Pushcart 2021. You want to see what people were writing? Guess how long the Best American Short Stories has been around? I just picked one off the shelf. It may be going back before this, from 1977, to see how poems have changed, right? So those are incredible, good sources for people to go to find. Again, you can use the Writers Market, or you can use the back of the Pushcart Prize, best of all the small presses, right? They're called small presses because they're probably 500 copies or less that they print each time that they print them. We're talking about our college one. This is 1 year's version of it. Here's another year's version of it. Here's a year's version of it. Here's a year's version of it. Here's a year's version of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see how the covers change, because the point that I'm trying to make is that whenever I talk about writing and publishing, we're also talking about those of you who are photographers. On a lot of you that write also paint. You also do photography. You also do ceramics. You also do a bunch of different art types of things. And so these are outlets of places that you can go to submit these things. Again, these books that I'm showing you, or magazines in the back of this, are not just, they don't just publish poetry because this is the Pushcart Prize of Poetry. A lot of those also publish photographs. They also publish, how would you know if they publish photographs or if they publish short stories, and what type of poems and short stories? Writers Market. One reason I buy the Writers Market each year is because I can mark it up. I can mark it up. And if you get the one from the library, you can't mark it up, or you're not supposed to mark it up. As we were speaking, a deal just flashed up on my screen, and there is a reputable it's a I don't know what you call them, a e-book or whatever, e-publication north of Oxford that just popped up on my screen. They're reputable, and that's what I'm talking about, is knowing where to send, when to send, and the fact that they just sent me something makes me want to look in to see if they're having a contest, or if they're having a some sort of something prize winning kind of thing, those types of things. It's a constant, everyday kind of sort of thing that you have to work on. It's not going to happen overnight. It might for some of you, but for the most part, it's like getting a gig at a bar. You go in and you ask the bartender, can we do a gig? And their second question is going to be, have you done a gig in a bar before? And are you in the right bar? Do you play the right type of music for this bar? Do you have 4 hours worth of music? And those are some questions you're going to have to be able to answer. And the answer to that is, if you haven't played in a bar, then and you have to say no, then they're going to say, come back when you played in a bar. It's a catch-22 situation where you say, well, how can I play in a bar if I've never played in a bar? No one's going to let me play in a bar unless I play in a bar. And so a lot of times what we had to do is we had to go around that, say, can we come in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and set up and play 3 songs and let you see if we're something that you want to see. And again, just like a book publisher, why are they publishing books? They want to sell books. What does a bar want to sell? They want to sell liquor and food and bring in a lot of people. And so what they want from a band is for someone to bring in a lot of people. What they want to do whenever they're publishing in these journals is to publish people that they know will bring in a readership, that people will subscribe to their magazine, to their journal, to whatever it is that they're subscribing to, and make it up and subscribe so that they can maintain their publication. Let me see if I've missed any major deals here. Oh, mail. This is what I'm really strict about. I usually mail only between October and November, and then January through April. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of journals that are related to colleges, and colleges mostly close during Christmas and they close during the summer, which means that that's a lot of times when they don't read. Another thing that is going to be in this writer's market is they're going to say, we only accept material from this date to this date. And so if you send something after that date or before that date, they ain't going to read it. It's going to be something that they're going to leave alone. So make sure that you follow the rules. The rules are in this book, and they're in this book for a reason. And this writer's market book has been around forever and ever and ever. Probably the most reputable book that you can get for a writer. Yes.
I was just going to interject real quickly and let everyone know that we are actually in the process of, we don't have the most recent writers market. And so we're actually in the process of getting the writers, I'm sorry?
At Frisco.
Yes, at the Frisco campus. So we're actually in the process of getting the writers market, the poets market, the short story writers market.
Excellent.
And the children's writers and illustrators market. So,
and that's one I forgot. I remembered I was forgetting one in the children and literature market too. I had a girl last semester in class, and that's what she wanted to write. And I said, there's a market for that. There's a big market for that. There's a huge market for that, you know, and there's a writer's market book for that. And I really appreciate that y'all are ordering those books, because and keeping them up to date, because it does change from year to year to year to year. Tremendous.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm also going to interject and say, we had somebody in the chat say, I sent several queries earlier this year for my first novel and finally got one publisher that gave me feedback on it. I'm making
Excellent.
and plan to resubmit in 6 months.
So what was the question then?
I don't think that was a question. I think that was just an interjection.
I think that's so cool, because once you get, you know, I think one of my favorite rejections was from the New Yorker. You know, when you have someone actually write something on there, you know, try us again or send something back, you know, again sometime, that sort of stuff. It's a shot in the arm, you know, whenever you get somebody that's actually taken the time, because I can tell you, as many as we open and look at and go through, for us to take the time to write something down on it from the publishing end, what I'm doing is I'm saying, look, this was really, really close. And you need to show this around to some more places, maybe to, you know, do a little more research and find your right market, whatever your right market is. Maybe look over the material again, the manuscript again. I cannot tell y'all that no one else is going to do your stuff for you. You have to do it yourself. That's my biggest pet peeve with my creative writers, is I tell them, no one's going to do this for you unless you have an incredible cat or a dog. No one's going to do it for you. You're going to have to do this yourself. This is an incredibly private. I guess that's a good word for it. It's a very singular endeavor, but it's a very satisfying endeavor whenever you do get something. And like the person said that they got, you know, a query back that had something that was written on it is excellent. That's a huge step forward, in my opinion, and let that be impetus for you to continue on.
Okay, so I do actually have a question from someone else.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
They said, what if someone publishes a short story and then wants to build it out to a novel? Is that okay?
Okay, okay, who's selling what to whom and who wants to build it out?
I think the question is if, say, I wrote a short story.
Right.
And I decided later that I wanted to expand that short story to a novel length story.
Even though it was published.
Even though it was already published.
Yes, you can do that. You can do that. In fact, a lot of short stories have been turned into movies.
Oh, interesting.
And novels. Yeah,
Okay.
a lot.
Well, we've got about, it looks like we've got about 12 minutes before our hour has elapsed. So I just wanted to jump in and see if anybody else had any questions.
Yeah, because I was about done on
Okay.
my list.
Okay, I have somebody asking, what's your opinion or what are your feelings about writers groups?
I have mixed. If you find the right one, they're amazing. If you find the wrong one, they're not. It's like a restaurant. Go to your favorite restaurant, try one out, and if you don't like it, then quit going to it. Some of them want to determine the direction of what it is that you're writing, or they don't write the same stuff. Never ever discount age, because people who have been writing for a long time may know more than you think that they know. And never discount age the other direction either. Is a lot of the students in my class teach me way more than I teach them, and I say that with true honesty, that there's some good writers, and every once in a while I hear some stuff and I'll think, holy cow, that's, where's that coming from? And so it keeps me young, and my ability to hear the word, the spoken word, the written word in a different way each semester, and it kind of keeps me fresh. And so I think writers groups are great, but search around, look around. There's one that's connected with Ilya's Honey in Dallas. There's one that Beth Ayers is connected with, and she's published quite a bit with us and some other places too. The Texas Society for Poetry, I think, is what she's involved with, and they do publication every year, I think, too, a book publication. So you just have to start looking around. You have to look around, and again, no one else is going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. It's you that has to look. I used to spend Saturdays doing it. I would spend 2 hours, and I would spend 2 hours, and then I'd quit, and I would say, okay, I'm gonna do this 2 hours every Saturday, and or sometime during the week, but 2 hours a week on where I was going, not writing, but where I was going to send stuff, because that's the business end of it.
All right, well, does anybody else have any questions that they would like to put in the chat? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. And I'm not trying to cut you short or anything, Scott.
No, I'm not.
Anything else?
I'm just happening.
I did want to point out to everyone that you had shared with me a document of your tips for publishing, and we will be posting that on the NaNoWriMo LibGuide that I have sent to everyone, and I will resend that link in a follow-up email tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so
Everyone
much.
will have access to that. We have someone who says, thank you for the information.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, unless you have anything else, go ahead and wrap it up. This is the very last of the workshops in our NaNoWriMo series. And this, I think, has been a wonderful way to kind of round things out at the very end. So thank you so much for your contribution to our workshop series. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's like, again, I've said, I'm sorry if I talked fast because it's like getting a whole semester in an hour, but if you write, please write. And I'm here, and I do teach a creative writing class. And like I said, we've got several other people that teach creative writing here that are they're good writers. So take that into account.
Well, thank you so much once again. And for all of our participants, you can expect a follow-up email tomorrow. And we are going to send out a short survey, if you wouldn't mind filling that out and helping us continue providing workshops in this format, and also, helping us improve how we do things. So thank you to our participants, and thank you so much to our speaker, Scott Yarbrough. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for everything you did to help me get, y'all don't know it, but she helped do all the Zoom stuff because Mr. Yarbrough was stupid.
Don't say stupid, Mr. Yarbrough. I'm more than happy to do it, and I have actually learned so much about Zoom in the last month while putting on these workshops. So
I appreciate that. I really do. I really do.
You're helping me better myself. How about that? Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you for staying late with us tonight.
Thank you.